After many years of living and working abroad, Zainabu finally came back to her village, Lubanda. Her heart was full of excitement, and her hands carried heavy bags filled with gifts for everyone she loved. She had imagined this moment countless times while working late nights in a foreign land. She pictured her mother's warm embrace, her brother's laughter, and the children running to her with bright smiles. Every step she took toward home was filled with hope and love. When she arrived, her family welcomed her with open arms. They clapped, hugged her, and said how much they had missed her. Zainabu's heart melted with happiness. She thought to herself, all my struggles were worth it, because now I can finally give back to the people I love most. She carefully looked at their faces, trying to memorize their smiles, because this was the moment she had been waiting for. But what Zainabu did not see was the secret look in some of their eyes. Behind the laughter and warm greetings, there was something else, something darker. While she saw love, some of them only saw the bags she carried. Instead of thinking about her sacrifices, they were already thinking about what they could take from her. To Zainabu, it was a homecoming filled with love, but to some of her family, it was the arrival of wealth they could use for themselves. She didn't know it yet, but her joy was about to turn into heartbreak. As soon as Zainabu entered her old room, she began unpacking the big bags she had brought with her. One by one, she took out the gifts. Colorful dresses for her mother, shiny shoes for her sisters, toys for the children, and even small perfumes and jewelry she had saved up for. She smiled to herself as she laid them neatly on the bed. Each gift carried a story. She remembered the long nights at work, the times she skipped meals, and the times she held back tears of loneliness. Also, she could save enough money to buy something special for her family. To her, these gifts were not just things. They were pieces of her love, her sacrifice, her years of hard work abroad. But while Zainabu was busy arranging the gifts with a heart full of joy, another scene was unfolding in the next room. Her brothers sat close together, speaking in low whispers. "These things are worth a lot of money," one of them said. "Why should we just keep them? If we sell them in bail market, we can make good profit." Another agreed quickly, saying, "She has more where this came from. She's been working outside the country for years. Let her keep bringing. We'll keep selling." Their voices carried greed, not gratitude. They did not see Zainabu's sleepless nights or her tired hands that had earned every coin. They only saw the shine of gold jewelry, the new fabrics, and the expensive perfumes. To them, her sacrifice was not love, it was business. Meanwhile, in her room, Zainabu folded a new dress carefully, whispering to herself, "Mama will look so beautiful in this." Her heart was soft, her eyes full of hope. She believed her family would treasure these gifts forever. Little did she know, the same gifts she was packing with love were already being counted as money in her brothers' minds. The walls of the house kept her in the dark. She could not hear the whispers, she could not see the hungry eyes. She could not feel the betrayal that was being planned under her own roof. For Zainabu, it was a day of giving. For her brothers, it was the beginning of taking. That night, when everyone had gone quiet, Afia sat alone by the doorway of the house. The cool breeze touched her face, but her heart was heavy. She had seen it all, the secret whispers of her sons, the greedy glances at Zainabu's gifts, the way they spoke as if her daughter's love was nothing more than money to be exchanged. She wanted to speak, to stand up, to tell them, "These are not just gifts, these are pieces of her life, her sweat, her sleepless nights." But fear held her tongue still. Afia was a mother, and she knew the struggles her daughter had faced abroad. She remembered the days when Zainabu's letters arrived, filled with words of longing and hope. She remembered the money her daughter sent home, always saying, "Mama, buy something nice for yourself," even though she herself was living in a small shared room far away. Afia knew the cost of every dress, every piece of jewelry, every toy. They were not bought with ease. They were bought with hunger, with tired eyes, with sacrifices no one else in the family could understand. As tears slipped down her wrinkled cheeks, she whispered softly, "My poor child, if only you knew." Her heart ached because she wanted to protect her daughter from the betrayal that was brewing inside the very home she trusted. But Afia was afraid. Her sons had become harsh, and she knew that if she spoke against them, they might push her aside, silence her, or even throw her out of the house. The thought of being cast away in her old age terrified her, so she chose silence. She wept quietly in the dark, hiding her tears from Zainabu, who still moved around happily, planning surprises for everyone. Afia's heart broke every time she looked at her daughter's face glowing with joy. She knew that glow would not last long. She knew the storm that was coming, but she felt powerless to stop it. In the stillness of the night, her only prayer was, "God, give my daughter strength when she learns the truth. Don't let her heart break completely." Her tears fell not just for the betrayal, but for the love of a mother who knew what was coming yet could do nothing to prevent it. The sun had barely risen when Zainabu's brothers quietly took the first bag of gifts out of the house. She was still asleep, resting after days of travel, her face peaceful with dreams of her family cherishing what she had brought. In her mind, she saw her mother wearing the new dress, the children laughing with their toys, and everyone thanking her with love. But outside, another story was unfolding. At Mbale Market, her brothers moved quickly. They spread out the dresses on wooden stalls, holding them up to attract buyers. "Look at this fabric, straight from abroad," they shouted, their voices full of excitement, not pride. Jewelry pieces sparkled in the sunlight, perfumes were sprayed into the air to show their richness, and toys meant for innocent little hands were tossed into a pile for bargaining. Strangers touched and bought everything, unaware that these were gifts meant to carry love from a daughter to her family. Back at home, Zainabu stretched on her bed, smiling in her sleep. She imagined her siblings opening the bags and gasping with joy. She thought about the laughter that would fill the courtyard when the children saw their new clothes. To her, these gifts were treasures that would tie her closer to her family. She never imagined that while she dreamed, her treasures were being handed away to strangers for a few notes of cash. Her mother, Afia, walked through the market later that day and froze. Her eyes widened when she saw the dress she had admired the night before hanging on a stall. She wanted to scream, wanted to pull it down and cry, "This was from my daughter." But fear kept her quiet, just as before. Her tears fell silently as she walked away, her heart shattering with each step. One by one, everything disappeared, the clothes, the jewelry, the perfumes, the toys. The very things Zainabu had carried with love across oceans were gone in a single morning, exchanged for money that slipped easily into greedy pockets. When Zainabu woke up and looked at the bags, she thought her family had already taken the gifts and kept them safe. She smiled, believing her offerings were being cherished. Little did she know, the hand she trusted most had already betrayed her love in the crowded stalls of Mbale Market. It did not take long for the news to spread across Lubanda village. Neighbors who had gone to Mbale Market returned whispering among themselves. They had seen Zainabu's brothers selling the very gifts she had carried all the way from abroad. Dresses, jewelry, perfumes. Everyone in the market knew they were not ordinary things. They were special, carefully chosen treasures. The villagers shook their heads in disbelief. How could they do this to their own blood? One woman asked, covering her mouth in shock. That girl works so hard out there, and instead of honoring her love, they are selling it like cheap goods. Another man sighed deeply. Greed can blind even the closest of families. Poor Zainabu, she has no idea what is happening behind her back. The whispers grew louder day by day. Some neighbors pitied her. Others were angry at her family, but no one dared to tell Zainabu directly. They didn't want to be caught in the middle of family matters, yet their hearts ached for the girl who had returned home with nothing but love. Meanwhile, inside her home, Zainabu moved with joy and excitement. She hummed softly as she swept the courtyard, thinking about the big feast she wanted to prepare for everyone. "I want my family and neighbors to eat well and celebrate together," she said cheerfully, already imagining the laughter, the dancing, and the stories they would share. Her face glowed with happiness, unaware that outside her walls, people were whispering about her betrayal. Children playing on the road looked at her with sad eyes, wondering if she knew the truth. Women at the water well shook their heads whenever her name was mentioned. Zainabu believed she had given her family something to be proud of, but the reality was that they had already brought shame upon themselves. The villagers could see it clearly, but she remained blind to it, her heart too pure, her trust too strong. While her neighbors whispered in pity, Zainabu's hands worked with love, planning a feast for the very people who were breaking her heart behind her back. The day of the village festival finally arrived. Drums beat in the distance, children ran through the dusty paths, and the smell of roasted meat filled the air. Zainabu dressed with joy, her heart light as she thought about celebrating with her family and neighbors. She believed this would be the moment when all her struggles abroad would feel worth it, seeing everyone together, happy and proud. As she entered the festival grounds, her smile was wide and her eyes bright. But then, slowly, her steps grew heavy. She noticed something that made her chest tighten. A woman she barely knew was wearing the exact dress Zainabu had bought for her mother. A little boy ran past, holding the toy she had carried for her nephew. Another girl walked by with jewelry around her neck, the same jewelry Zainabu had saved for months to buy for her sister. Her heart skipped, her breath caught in her throat. She blinked again and again, hoping it was a mistake. But everywhere she looked, she saw her treasures, on strangers, shining under the sun, as if mocking her. The very gifts she had carried across oceans, thinking of the smiles on her family's faces, were now scattered across the festival, worn proudly by people who had no idea they were never meant for them. Zainabu's hands began to tremble. Her lips quivered, but no words came out. Inside her chest, her heart sank like a heavy stone. She turned to look at her family, searching for answers in their eyes, but they avoided her gaze. Their laughter rang hollow, their smiles thin, as if nothing was wrong. In that painful moment, the truth struck her harder than any blow. Her gifts had not been cherished, they had been sold. The hand she trusted the most, the very family she had sacrificed for, had betrayed her love in exchange for money. The festival that was supposed to be a celebration turned into a wound that cut deep into her soul. Tears burned in her eyes, but she forced herself to stand tall, even as her heart broke into pieces. The music and dancing continued around her, but for Zainabu, the festival was nothing but shame, a cruel mirror reflecting her family's greed. That evening, after the festival, Zainabu walked slowly back to the house. Her chest felt heavy, her steps weak, but her heart was burning with questions. She could no longer stay silent. When she entered the courtyard, her family was gathered there, talking and laughing as if nothing had happened. Zainabu stood in front of them, her eyes wet, her voice trembling but strong. "Tell me the truth," she said, her words sharp like a blade. "Why were my gifts in the hands of strangers at the festival? Why did you sell the things I brought with love?" For a moment, silence filled the air. No one moved. Her mother looked down, her eyes swimming with tears. She could not speak. But her brothers shifted uncomfortably. Then one of them finally snapped. "And so what if we sold them? You went abroad, you have money, you can buy more. Don't act like we owe you anything." Zainabu's eyes widened in shock. Another voice joined in, colder than the first. "You think you are special because you came back with bags? Let me tell you the truth, you are only good for what you bring us. Without those gifts, you are nothing here." Her heart cracked at those words. It was like a knife cutting through her chest. She had dreamed of being embraced, of being thanked, of being loved. But instead, she was reduced to nothing more than a provider, a source of wealth. Her hands shook, and tears spilled down her cheeks, but she refused to collapse. She lifted her chin, her voice breaking but steady. "So my love means nothing to you. My years of sacrifice, my nights of hunger, my dreams for this family, they mean nothing." No one answered. The courtyard was filled with silence, broken only by her sobs. Her spirit cracked that night, but it did not shatter. Deep inside, a fire began to grow, a fire that whispered, "They may have betrayed you, but you are worth more than their greed." As the stars appeared in the sky above Lubanda, Zainabu wiped her tears. The courtyard, once a place of love, now felt like a prison of betrayal. But she promised herself she would not stay broken forever. That night, Zainabu sat alone in her room, her eyes swollen from crying. The courtyard confrontation echoed in her mind, each cruel word replaying again and again. "You are only good for what you bring us." Her heart ached, and for the first time, she wondered if she had made a mistake coming back home. As she pulled her suitcase closer, searching for comfort in the things she had carried, her hand brushed against an old envelope tucked inside one of the side pockets. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she opened it. It was a letter from her late father, written years ago before she had left for abroad. The sight of his handwriting made her chest tighten and her tears flow all over again. She unfolded the paper carefully, and in the soft light of the lamp, she read his words. My dear Zainabu, life will not always be kind to you. People may not see your heart, and even your own blood may hurt you. But remember this. Never let their greed define you. Your value is not in the things you give, but in the person you are. You are more than money, more than gifts. You are my daughter, and you are priceless. Her hands shook as she read, but this time the tears that fell were not just of pain, they were of strength. Her father's words wrapped around her heart like a shield. She could almost hear his voice, gentle yet strong, guiding her through the darkness. For the first time since her return, Zainabu lifted her head and breathed deeply. She realized she had been giving too much of herself, believing that love could be bought with gifts and sacrifice. But her father's letter reminded her that her worth had nothing to do with money or what she carried in her bags. It was in her heart, her courage, and her spirit. Clutching the letter to her chest, Zainabu whispered softly, Baba, I hear you. I will not let them break me. In that quiet night, surrounded by betrayal and silence, her father's words lit a fire of hope. The same family that tried to weaken her had unknowingly awakened her strength. The next morning, Zainabu woke up with a new kind of strength in her heart. Her father's letter was still clutched in her hand, and his words echoed inside her. Your value is beyond what you give. She knew then that she could no longer stay in a home where love was measured only by gifts. Her spirit deserved better, her life deserved better. Quietly, she packed her small suitcase again. This time, not with gifts for others, but with the little she had left for herself. She folded her clothes neatly, slipped her father's letter into a safe pocket, and took one last look around the house where she had poured all her love. There was no sadness in her eyes now, only resolve. When she stepped out into the village streets, whispers followed her once again. But this time they were not whispers of pity. They were whispers of admiration. She is brave, the women at the water well said. After all that pain, she still walks with her head high. The old men nodded, saying, That girl has courage. Kisango City will open doors for her. Her family, however, stood in silence. They watched her leave without trying to stop her. Perhaps they thought she would return again with more wealth, more gifts. But deep down, a shadow of regret had already started to grow in their hearts. They knew something had shifted, that they had lost more than gifts. They had lost Zainabu's trust, her love, and the bond that once tied her to them. As the bus to Kisango rolled out of the village, Zainabu looked out the window. Her eyes were wet, but this time the tears carried hope, not despair. She whispered to herself, I will build a new life. I will not let betrayal be the end of my story. Behind her, her family remained in Lubanda, their courtyard empty and their hearts restless. They did not yet realize that the betrayal they thought was small had cost them everything, the daughter who had given them her all, the sister who had loved them endlessly. In Kisango, a new chapter was waiting, and for the first time, Zainabu was ready to live for herself. Months passed, and Kisango City became the soil where Zainabu's broken heart grew strong again. She worked hard, using the same determination that once carried her through sleepless nights abroad. This time, however, she was building for herself. She opened a small shop, then another, and soon people in Kisango began to speak her name with respect. That woman is strong, they said. She turned her pain into power. Word traveled back to Lubanda. Villagers whispered to her family, Have you heard? Zainabu is now a successful businesswoman. She stands on her own feet. She sends nothing home. Her brothers looked at each other in silence, regret burning in their eyes. They remembered the toys, the dresses, the jewelry they had sold for a little money, and now they saw how much more she was worth. Her mother, Afia, cried quietly at night, knowing her daughter had given her heart, yet received betrayal in return. She longed to hold Zainabu to say sorry, but the distance between them was now deeper than oceans. Zainabu, meanwhile, walked the streets of Kisango with pride. She no longer carried heavy bags for others. She carried only her dreams. Her gifts were no longer wrapped in boxes for family. They were wrapped in self-love, in freedom, in peace. The family that once mocked her for being only good for what she brought, now wept in regret. They had lost her forever, not because she stopped loving them, but because they had crushed her love with greed. For Zainabu, triumph was not in revenge. It was in choosing herself. And that was the greatest gift of all.